Morning, Julia.
Great to speak to you. We spoke a little bit earlier to a representative of Extinction Rebellion. This is Etienne Stott, who should have, frankly, kept to the canoeing. He's an Olympic gold medalist at 2012 Olympics. But he was talking about how, when you get, the usual stuff that we hear. He was talking about how, we need an end to the fossil fuel era and how we're facing the end of civilization. And that's why we need to act. Should the government face up to these threats?
Well, of course, we live in a civilised society. If we allow this type of anarchy to continue, it's going to cost the society, real money for you and I going about our normal business. I mean, we've seen a ramping up of activism over this last weekend with the Grand National and, of course, the activities of the Crucible. And do you know what doesn't help, Julia, is when most of the media actually use the coverage. I mean, it was very photogenic, wasn't it? Throwing around the white, yellow powder at the Crucible.
I always question myself on this. Should we just completely ignore it, refuse to cover it? But when everyone else is covering it, we're playing the footage right now. You feel like you can't not cover it because it's what's in the news.
Well, I know, but that's exactly what their desire is, that everybody covers it and... it's worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of media space in
but here's the thing, though. Is this helping them? When they do demonstrations and protests like this, again, no one can work. I've yet to find an explanation for why they wanted to disrupt the snooker. I mean, I know the concerns about Grand National, concerns supposedly about animal safety. Were they concerns about cue ball safety? I don't know. Concern for the colour green on the cover of the snooker table. I mean, it's just absurd. But this is the thing. A lot of people just, who might have been sympathetic to this cause, who might be signed up to the sort of the BBC Guardian agenda of we're all going to die, Greta Thunberg's our saviour nonsense. They might be sympathetic, but not when, their car is stopped on the M25 for 6 hours and not when they've paid, 300 quid for a ticket to the snooker and they don't get to see a full match.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, I've got absolutely no doubt that 90, 95, 99% of people in the country are certainly not signed up to this. And the more their lives are disrupted and interfered with and annoyed, people can't get to a hospital appointment or even one of their loved ones getting stopped in traffic in an ambulance, I think the support for this type of activity goes down and down and down. I mean, I've been an activist all my years, Julia. I've been on marches in London about Brexit in the 90s. I've been doing public meetings and all the rest of it. But it was aimed towards the ballot box. So that's where change should happen. And indeed, it did in time. I'm really intrigued about their citizens' assemblies. I'm waiting for our invite, you and I, Julia. Yeah. I don't expect we'll be on the invitation.
No, indeed. Well, we'd be disruptive influences, I imagine. We'd be sent to the back of the class. And this is the thing. It's when they make demands, they say we need to... And again, the guest we had on earlier talking about citizens' assemblies, emergency citizens' assemblies to decide in the future of how we deal with these eco-threats. We have a citizens' assembly. You're a member of it. You were elected by people in a free and democratic secret ballot to be a representative of the people of your constituency to represent us in our assembly. I believe it's called the Houses of Parliament. It is really extraordinary that these people don't just simply stand for election. We see, the Green Party stand for election, and we see what support they get in whether it's we've had elections where there's actually been PR, so they've been able to get perhaps a greater representation. I think up to 13% in one election. Normally it's around the 3% mark. That is the height of their support in this country. If these people think that the British public are on their side, they'd stand in elections and they'd win them.
Well, exactly. Why not have the Extinction Rebellion party standing in the local elections or general elections? But just concentrate on this guy Eldred Whittingham, who did the orange powder at the Crucible. I mean, this isn't the first time that he's been arrested for offences. He was involved in the oil terminal crisis up in what's called Kingsbury, I think, in Warwickshire. He glued himself to things. He's been throwing red paint all over the place. Do you know what we need? We don't need new laws. And I heard the reference to the Public Order Bill. We've got plenty of laws to stop this type of activity. Road acts for so that the King's Highway can be traversed without let or hindrance. These laws go back a very long time. Public order offences and generally common law offences to stop this type of thing. Do you know what might stop them, Julia? It is if they're taken to bankruptcy for the tortuous damage that they've caused in breaking windows. I mean, you see these big plate glass windows in office blocks. I mean, they must run to thousands of pounds.
Oh, I mean, it's happened. It's happened in buildings that I work in, and
well, exactly.
it is extraordinary again. And they never have to pay the cost. And again, judges, as James here was pointing out, often seem to be remarkably sympathetic to them. Is it a coincidence, do you think, that people, you know, we interviewed Etienne Stott a little bit earlier. The Just Stop Oil activist who ruined the snooker for everyone was called Edred Whittingham, as you say. He's the son of a venture capitalist company director. I mean, you know, is it a coincidence that nearly always the people that get arrested for these things, you know, and he crowdfunds to get people to donate, to pay for his shopping, to pay for his costs, so he doesn't have to work in a pub and he can spend more time being an activist, being, you know, arrested and 6 times. These people, they seem to always come from a certain sort of privileged background. Is that pretty telling? Because these people who they're growing up in, you know, maybe not the lap of luxury, but certainly with, you know, economic security, not having to worry about their future. Apparently he's not worried about ever getting a job. That's not how most people grow up. Most people do worry about getting a job, not having a criminal record, and they worry about paying the bills. I mean, the inflation rate, 10.1%, the latest inflation rate, not as down below 10% as many had certainly been hoping. More people, frankly, are worried about that today than they are worried about, let me check my notes again, the end of civilization if we don't get rid of fossil fuels.
Well, you're quite right, Julia. Many are these sort of self-styled, opinionated, pampered youngsters with wealthy family. As I say, taking these people to bankruptcy as part of the cost of what they're doing might be a good way forward. But I expect a lot of these people you will have found last year, year before, having their gap year on the beaches of Thailand, sipping a Mai Tai whilst clipping their fingers, getting the waiter to bring them another Singer beer and a Tom Yum soup, whilst talking about Marxism into their top-of-the-range new smartphone.
But that's the thing, and it was interesting because the guest earlier said he did, and I said to him, thank you for saying the quiet bit out loud. He talked about how we need to stop using fuel to make all this stuff that we don't need. So much of this isn't actually about worrying about the planet. And again, there's nothing, as you know and I know, and anyone who bothers to look into this stuff, in any of these IPCC reports, which apparently predicting the end of the world, nothing in the scientific elements of these reports, nothing in the data says anything of the sort. It's just hysterical, you know, eco-fanaticism and religious zealotry that people are claiming this, including, by the way, Antonio Guterres, the UN General Secretary, who should be ashamed of himself for his absolute scaremongering nonsense. But what these people want to do, they want to turn back the clock on the Industrial Revolution, and they want to turn back the clock on, frankly, the quality of life that people live right now in the first world, but also preventing people in the developing world from ever having the sort of lives that we live.
Absolutely. I think you scratch the surface of this campaign amongst all of them, and there is quite hardline socialism, Marxism going on. Yeah. That they know better, that we're all overindulged, and lights going on is something that we don't deserve, and most certainly the third world doesn't deserve any of the opportunities and better lifestyle that we've all enjoyed in the Western world for some period. So there is an underlying political ambition behind much of their activities, not just this rather weird hysteria that we're all going to burn up or drown or have no spot.
That said, the government that you support is still committed to the insanity, the economic and I'd say moral insanity and the practical insanity of net zero by 2050. When are you going to persuade them of the error of their ways, or do you need us voters to do that for you?
Well, as you know, I'm running a very robust campaign against a lot of this lunacy. I had a meeting with one of the energy ministers yesterday, and it's very strange. I'm getting the feeling that they're working to a menu card that they've all been given, but I think a lot of them are wondering, where did this come from? They're looking for the sort of the original leading light that's given them this menu card that, frankly, I'm getting the feeling none of them are all that keen on.
Yeah, I'm hoping they don't believe it in behind the scenes. None of their actions suggest they do. I mean, the reality is we've got inflation at 10.1%. People's real terms incomes going down. Cost of living continue to, just absolutely break a lot of people's finances. People are worried about their future. We've got an item later on in the future. Net zero will mean people won't be able to afford flights. The average person won't be able to afford flights to go on foreign holidays. Stuff that people work really hard all year to afford for them and their families. and makes life worthwhile. The British people don't want to be poorer. We want to be richer. I mean, we want to live better lives, at least the lives that we get to live right now, and hopefully better. And this net zero policy is not going to deliver that. It's going to make people poorer. Eventually, the British people are going to say enough is enough.
Well, I've no doubt they will, Julian. That's one of my campaigns, to actually say to the government, I came into politics to make people's lives better, to make the next generation's life that much more, comfortable, better, in all ways, whether that's quality of how we eat and medicine and all those sort of things. That's what I'm Conservative for. That should be our ambition. Now, wherever you look at the net zero agenda, whether it's, you mentioned flights. I mean, if we do substitute fossil fuels for artificial fuels, it's going to be more expensive. When we look at the emissions trading system, that makes everything we buy more expensive. I mean, this is getting out of hand, frankly, that people are just jumping on different dates, whether it's EVs by 2030 and the cancelling of ICE cars, whether it's decarbonising and scrapping oil boilers if you live in the wilds of the countryside. None of this works because we're not ready for it.
Absolutely.
And the technology is untried, untested, and frankly, people do not want it. And when they, we all want to leave this world in a better place than we found it. That, again, is an ambition of mine. But when that hits the road of costing an awful lot more taxes, less freedom, less ability of your own money to do what you want with, then I think the reality will really hit people and they'll say, no thanks.
I think also an awful lot of politicians are going to find that reality bites very hard indeed.